Welcome everybody. I'm very excited about this forum because this is something that over the years we've been mulling and thinking about how can we have a relaxed, informal discussion about the sort of role and perspective of horror from the female perspective. So I'm going to I'm going to introduce you to all one by one. We have Alice Lowe, who's literally just come off filming Prevenge, which is her debut feature film. So thank you for coming. We have Anne Biller, who is with us with her film The Love Witch. We have Kate Shenton, who's also got a film in the festival, which I'm sure perhaps you've all seen today. It's The Egomaniac.
It's on right now.
Oh, it's on right now. So you, sorry, you're here.
Seen my film. Hello.
We have a very prolific producer in Jen Handorf, and we have, who's going to be hosting the event, Digital Spies, Rosie Fletcher. So I'm going to pass over to Rosie now. Thank you.
So hello and thank you all for coming. So yeah, this is a panel to talk about gender and genre, women in horror. So just before we kick off, I wanted to give you a couple of stats, a bit of context of why we're kind of even bothering to have this conversation, basically. So I had a little bit of a look at research for like 2015 movies, and so in terms of independent film, female directors make up 19%. It's slightly higher with documentaries, but narrative is 19%. In terms of studio films and the highest grossing 100 in the last year, 7 were made by women. Horror, action and sci-fi are the least female-directed genres, and documentary is the highest. And this year at FrightFest we have 4 features by women and 9 shorts directed by women, but that's of 67 features in total and 26 shorts, so it isn't very many, basically. But actually the audience split, so women actually do like coming to see horror, so the audience split at FrightFest is 60-40 male female, which is quite a lot.
60 male, 40 female.
60 male, 40 female, yes.
I'm going to jump in because it's interesting to hear that, because generally in genre film attendees outside of FrightFest, it's usually a 50-50 split. You get minor skews, so it's interesting that not as many women come to the festival to support genre as go to the films in theaters traditionally.
That's true, and actually, so if you look at something like The Conjuring, which had the highest opening box office of an independent, of an original horror film in the last, or ever in fact, it was 53% women who made up the box office for that. Ringu, The Grudge all had much higher female skews of audiences, so women do like horror movies. So I want to kick off by asking, does it matter? Does it matter that there aren't any women that make horror? Well, not aren't any, but aren't many women. Do you think it's an important thing? And do you think that women bring something different to the genre?
Yes. Does anybody not think yes?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it does matter. I think it matters hugely, because I think having more female filmmakers making horror films is bringing a completely different, it's bringing a new story, it's bringing a new style, it's bringing a new perspective, which I think is something that the genre needs. Otherwise we're going to keep going down very similar stereotypes, very similar tropes. And I think having having more women's voices in there is going to create more exciting work for the genre.
And I totally agree with Kate. I think also, just as if somebody said, I don't like foreign films, awesome. So if somebody's like, oh, I don't like films from female directors, it's like, they're not the same makeup. And it's when people say, or people ask about, oh, do women bring something? Well, individuals bring something to the table. And when you're eliminating 50% of the individuals in a marketplace, then it gets kind of fucking boring, actually. Yeah. But the other side, I think, even more importantly, having women represented as directors, producers, pregnant directors, all this kind of thing, is it creates the opportunities for women to take those positions. And I think that's the real issue, is that women are limited in the positions they're believed to be able to hold. And not being funny, not just jump straight into the hashtag not all men, but how many people on the stage have had a man tell them you can't do X because you're a woman in the industry? Because I've definitely had that said to me.
I've definitely had that.
And we're all nodding our heads here quietly, right? But it's also, that's crazy. That's absolutely insane. 4, 5 strong independent women who get told that they can't do something because they don't have dangly bits or the right dangly bits between their legs.
Alice, you're making your directorial debut with Prevenge. I mean, how did you find that as an experience?
Thanks. great. Yeah, I mean, it was never sort of my lifelong ambition to direct whilst pregnant. Yeah. That was something that just happened.
That is incredible.
And I kind of decided that I would take full advantage of the press angle of that in a way, because I think films are hard to get funded, and you need a hook these days. And I kind of thought, do you know what, if I did this, people might go crazy for it, you know. And I kind of thought, I'm tempting fate by taking the health of my unborn child in my hands. But at the same time, because I was directing it, I made sure that I wasn't going to push myself to do anything that I wasn't comfortable doing. And I've just had this is the thing, I've had so many years of working on low budget films, on short films, writing, acting, and I've just started directing, and I just felt like this is the one thing that they can't take this job away from me. They can't say, no, sorry, we're going to get a bloke in to do this at the last minute, because no, I'm fucking pregnant and I'm going to do it. And you can't get a man to come in and do the pregnancy film, okay? Because it would really upset me and I would cry. But do you know what I mean? I just kind of thought, fuck, I've got to go for it. And so I did, and I obviously don't regret that at all now, but I think it's helped me get over that hump of that first film, which is a really difficult hump to get over for any filmmaker, I think.
And so Anna, Love Witch isn't your first film. You've done shorts and you've done features, but you get involved in lots of different parts of the filmmaking process, don't you? So you do your own editing, you do your own set design. I mean, again, was that something that you very deliberately wanted to do, to really own every part of it?
Yeah, I do want to own every part of the process, but the other thing is also, it has to do with budget, because I'm very ambitious in terms of what I want to see on the screen, and I actually really can't afford. I mean, I'm not MGM, but I try to pretend that I am.
So that's a good way to be. I mean, but in terms of obstacles, what kind of things have you guys come across? What kind of problems that you've had that you think may be related to gender?
Ugh. Like I've literally, I mean, the thing is, and I have probably more male friends than I have female friends, and they're awesome guys, and I think it speaks very well of them that they're shocked when they hear the kind of things women put up with, not just in the film industry, but in the workplace on a daily basis. And I think it's a shame, because the people who aren't like that don't tend to hang out with people who behave like that. So they don't see it, they're not aware that it exists so much. On The Chamber, there was a person managing one of our locations, wasn't hired by us, he worked for the location, and he literally wouldn't speak to me, he would only speak to my production manager. So if you're my production manager, I'm me, this is the location's head, I'd say, yeah, so we need to book it for 14 hours, we're going to be there, we're going to use the 16 amp power, we're going to parking, blah, blah, blah. He would lean over me and ask questions to my male production manager, and he never directly addressed me. So it's things as innocuous as this, all the way to literally I was told that I wasn't allowed to speak to a male first AD in a certain way because I was a woman. I was told I was not allowed to cut his balls off in front of the crew. And it's like, so that exists every day. And that's just the stuff that's in our faces. Like, I think there's definitely, not to be a conspiracy theory nutball, but I mean, I think there is definitely behind the scenes conversations that would be terrifying if we knew about them. But if this is the stuff on the foreground, it's shocking to think what might be behind the scenes.
I think for me, I mean, from my personal experiences, I think it can go even darker than that. I mean, I have generally been in meetings where I've been made to feel incredibly uncomfortable. Recently, I was having a meeting in Cannes, and I was trying to pitch my film, but I couldn't actually finish the pitch of this film because the guy I was pitching to, who's like vice president of a big company, was like showing me photos of him on his motorbike. And no, I kid you not. Like, are
there any male directors in the room? Has that happened to you guys?
Literally. And I was like desperately
here's my boat
to get through this pitch. And then he was like, look at me on here. And then by the end of the meeting, he was like, do you want to stroke my beard? You know you want to stroke my beard. And I literally had to very politely and quickly fake having another meeting. And I'm like, what? And now I'm getting emails from his company going, we'd really love to hear about all your projects. And I'm like, well, you could have heard about them, but you were having a midlife crisis in front of me. Like, but then it can go even darker than that. Like, the first night that I went to Cannes, and I didn't know anybody in the industry, and I had no support net, like the very, very first night, I was literally by a complete random stranger who I later found out was a Hollywood composer. I was pressed against the back of an elevator. He ground his cock into me and then propositioned me to come back to his flat. And it's like, when I was in Cannes this year, I had 4 different cases.
It's not just Cannes, by the way.
Yeah,
like, this is like
it's not just Cannes, but I do think it's the worst
hashtag
place.
not all film festivals. Hashtag
Yeah.
Just can.
Just Cannes. Just
Sexually
Cannes.
harassed
But it's
on
like,
the
but
beach.
even then, like because I teach film students, and I have had film students come up to me with things like, I was speaking to this person, they're very influential, they made a pass at me, I don't want to piss them off, but because I kind of need them to support my career, but also I feel quite threatened. And that is actually a more regular thing than you think. And it took me a long time before I started to open up about it.
And not to be weird, and I think it is important that we talk about it, because like I said, I think a lot of people don't know that this kind of thing is common. So as women, we go, oh God, this happened to me, but I don't want to talk about it because maybe and you second guess yourself, and you do. But again, as an example, the head of an advertising agency I used to work for literally offered me to the head of Unilever while we were at an ad agency, basically the equivalent of Cannes, but this thing called M3 in Barcelona. He literally said, if you like my producer, I can arrange for her to go to your room if you want to do your next campaign with us, in front of me. And they're like, ha, 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 ha. But seriously, I got text from this guy at 3 a.m. This shit happens. This is not Mad Men. This is actually like happening every day. And I'm sure loads of the women in this room have stories exactly like this. So when we get asked the question, is it important that even though 50% of graduating students from film school are women and only 19% end up getting to a point where they can direct men, our ovaries aren't detaching from our bodies and making us bad directors. There's something else going on between point A and point B. And it's important to talk about that and let it be known.
Oh, and one more slightly depressing stat for you. It's very, lots of women make one film and never again, or make a short and don't make a feature because they have such an unpleasant experience on those films. So.
Is that why though? Or is it because I remember Sally Potter talking about this, and she said if I was a man I'd get to make a film every 2 years, and as it is I get to make one every 10 years. And I can see how that happens. I don't want it to happen because I've just made my first film, but I think that from my experience just as an actress, I mean I've blanked out the sexual innuendo stuff that I just can't even remember that stuff.
It's all faded into
trauma.
one disgusting memory.
But from my perspective, it's just about proving to people that you are good. And it's like every time you do something that's good, you feel like people are going, oh, but that might have been a fluke. I feel like that's my whole career, and I have been plugging away, working my arse off, and I always turn in my homework, and I always do the work, and I do more than one person's work quite often. And still they're like, yeah, but this guy who seems like a bit of a chancer, I'm going to give the money to him. And you're just like, but
he's sparky.
He's like the naughty kid at school, and I'm the good one that's doing all the right things and jumping through the hoops. And I think sometimes that is that can be a female trait, and sometimes I berate myself for it because I'm like, why am I operating by the rules so much? Why am I waiting for permission? Why aren't I just going out and fucking being the rock and roll, James Dean, Jamesina Dean,
Jamina, if you will. But it's the fear of being the difficult woman. I've been in a lot of situations myself where, especially when I was younger, now I kind of don't give a fuck anymore. And I'll just tell, I've not made a lot of friends in recent years in the male asshole executive department. But to be fair, I don't want them coming to my parties anyway, so fuck it. So yeah, I used to just be really quiet about it and like, oh, maybe it's me, maybe it's my fault, maybe it's my problem, maybe I should be quiet, maybe I don't need to be heard, maybe I can just sit here and not let him do what he wants to do. No, fuck that. You don't know what you're doing. The number of times first-time feature producers have said to me when I've got, I've produced 10 features, over 60 shorts, all of my features have distribution, all of my shorts have played at film festivals, from FrightFest to Sundance to Cannes to all over the world, to have somebody who's doing it their first time turn to me and say, well, I don't think you know what you're doing. where does that come from? And these are the same people who tell me I can't talk to a man that way. So it's got to be gender based.
But you can't.
Well, this is the thing. You can't talk to a man. No
can't.
offense, guys, but you can't.
No. And you know what to do is to just shut up. Mm-hmm. That's the right thing to do.
And it's that's why I've not made a lot of friends lately.
Yeah, that's what I've learned.
It's crazy though.
No, I mean just shut up.
And with your actresses, because obviously your actresses give a lot of themselves to you, and they give a lot of vulnerability to you. You must have heard some crazy experiences from them as actresses being that vulnerable. And Alice, I'm sure you have as well.
It's all happened to me. It's not happened to them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my days.
Because I'm the vulnerable one on the set. Yeah.
How's that? What's that been like?
Well, I made a feature before this one where I was starring in it. I was nude for part of it, and I was like running around directing, wearing negligees and underwear and stuff.
That's how I do it.
You do that too? Yeah, that was difficult. No, but for me, what I was going to say is the difficulty for me in being a woman directing a film is actually the feedback when you make a film and being so misunderstood in what you're trying to say. So. I remember back when I made my first student film, everybody was complaining about the production values, and they were just whining and complaining. And I made a film that looked exactly the way I wanted it to look. It was an experimental film, and I wanted the sets to look handmade and everything. And then I thought, well, people want so badly to have good production values. I'm going to give them good production values. So then I made a film with really good production values, and then all they would talk about is how good the production values were. And so ever since then, all they ever talk about is my production values as well. So what I've been trying to do all these years is try to get people to talk about my content. So that's not happening yet. It's still not happening.
You think, but The Love Witch it's a really beautiful film as well, but it's also just got such an interesting storyline.
But the thing is that it was out of this kind of feeling that I did have to prove that I could actually make a really well-crafted, well-made film, because people were actually acting that you don't know what you're doing technically, that I put so much time and energy and work into the design, the visual design and the lighting, and having it be so good technically. But then all people were saying was that it's good technically. So the thing is that, no, but the thing is that the thing about that is that the content is the problem. It's the sticking point. And so I think that's why women don't get to direct as many films, because we're used to a male subjectivity on the screen. We're used to a male narrative, and when you have a narrative that just feels kind of weird, right? It feels kind of different. So, we're used to beautiful visuals. Maybe that's good, and especially you have women and they're beautiful and they're on the screen and they can be like a blank fantasy projection screen. But we're not used to having an actual female subjectivity coming onto the screen, and I think that for some people it feels like wrong. So I'm getting a lot of reviews lately where they just, the surface of The Love Witch, it's so gorgeous, and you're so beautiful, and your star is so beautiful, and and everything looks so great, but there's just this something is missing. It's just flawed. It just isn't perfectly executed. It's just empty. There's just something, flat. The story just isn't really there. And the thing is that for me, it's a very complex, intricate story that has to do with I think a specifically female experience, and it's something that men are maybe not that interested in. And I think that we just have to get more women, in positions, curatorial positions, and things like that, so that there are people interested in these kinds of stories and not just in visuals. But they're not as many of them that are in charge of distribution and in charge of curating programs.
I was going to say, talking about women being in a curatorial position, because there's a lot of fantastic women running amazing film festivals, but you're absolutely right. I think it goes to what you were saying as well, Alice. There's a lack of trust, I think, between male executives and female creatives, which I think is kind of natural. Like, we as humans, we trust things that are familiar to us. So if you give us something that's the opposite or we see as foreign, we don't understand it, we have a hard time trusting it.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, is that women are so used to watching male stories that women will watch male stories. They have no problem with it. But men don't like to watch female stories. So that's why you really can much more easily market something that comes from a male writer.
I think you're absolutely right.
It's really a lot easier, and I think there is a box office drop off. See, because if you do what I'm doing and you sort of trick men into thinking that they're getting
put boobies in it. You're saying put some boobies in it.
Like sexy, a film that is for them, but it actually is only partly for them. It's also for women. So it's sort of like. and then they might end up feeling tricked, and that's why they might write a negative review. They might say, well, I sat through this film and I thought it was going to be sexploitation, and then I had to see some chicks like wedding fantasy, and I thought I was going to see a horror movie, and then here it's all about how she wants to get married. And it's just, and it is. That's a horror film for men. You have to sit and look. You have to watch women talking about guys in a pink tea room, and you have to do. And that's a true horror film for men.
And it's also what you were saying about women being used to watching male stories. Again, just an interesting statistic. If you look at people who go to the cinema goers, and even frequent cinema goers, so people who go more than once a month, it's a fairly even split, 51% female, 49% male. But if you look at the people who purchase cinema tickets, it's about 54% male, and what is that, 46% female, which means that you've got more men buying tickets. Now, I don't know quite what that means. Either like we've got this game sorted and you guys are just buying shit for us, or it's, I'll take you out, we'll go see what I want to see. I don't know which direction it goes, but when you see something that's a really female-centric film, like and I hate it when I say this as well, because why are rom-coms female-centric? I hate that, it's boring. It's not really, isn't it, anymore? Like in the 80s maybe, but, well, maybe not even. Maybe that's me being sexist now.
No, I don't.
Women liked romance more in the 80s. Now we've gotten wise.
Now we've got a bit wiser, we've moved forward. It's like, no, we want our careers now.
Exactly, guns and careers and horror
they did
films.
marketing surveys in the 80s that showed that men and women had these very different responses to advertising, where they're two people and they look like they might be romantically involved. It made the men who were looking at the advertising extremely tense. They were, yeah. And so they actually preferred a situation in which there was a female boss and a male subordinate than seeing two people in love, because there was less intimacy there. So the men preferred people in groups and people that looked like they had a casual relationship that wasn't very serious and definitely didn't involve any kind of love or intimacy like that.
This is back to the marriage horror film.
So this is like...
I want to go back to something you were saying about content, because I think that is a really brilliant insight, really, because with Sightseers, I had this really interesting thing where secretly, to me, it was a woman's narrative that I was smuggling in to a kind of horror genre. Well, it's not really a horror, but it's quite interesting because the bad reviews that we had were from men going, "There's no story." And I was like, there is, but it's a woman's. You just haven't seen it. You were so busy looking at all the blokes going, "Where's the story? These blokes, they're just staying the same." Well, she's doing some shit, but
I've had exactly the same comments about
like,
there being no content or no story when it's a woman's story. And I think, does that mean that men think that women have no lives, no subjectivity, there's no consciousness?
I mean, that was what I deliberately wanted to do with Prevenge. Is because as an actress, and we were talking about this as well, about maybe female directors having slightly different skill sets sometimes. Like, I felt like as an actress, that's the skill set that I bring. That I bring some of some of what I do to force people to empathise with me. As an actress, I bring that to my directing as well. So some of what I'm trying to do with my films is like, okay, this bloke thinks he's not going to be interested, but he fucking will be, because I'm going to force him to be. And that's what I'm doing with my acting skill set. And that's why I'm casting myself in the film, because I'm kind of going, you will get this. You might not think that you got it before, but I'm that's what I'm trying to do. And because for years I used to have people saying, I still get it, like blokes going, "I don't find women funny, but I find you funny."
It's
and
okay.
I don't have a dick.
There's this one as well. You're not like a normal woman. You're not like a. You're
a weirdo.
I like because you're like a bloke, and I can be friends with you. It's like I'm still definitely a woman.
Yeah.
There's none of that's changed just because I drink a pint of beer.
Thinks, well, maybe that's my secret weapon. That you kind of maybe we have to like train the audience to empathize with women, and that's my kind of secret mission with my films, that I'm kind of going, I deliberately made a film about a pregnant woman that was quite alien, because I'm like, well, women, when they get pregnant, you don't go, "Oh, this feels natural and completely normal." You feel like, fucking hell, this is weird, like my body's changing, I can feel something moving inside me, it's alien, and a man would feel the same. And So I wanted to make a film that was like, imagine if you got pregnant. It wouldn't be that different. Yeah. You know, it's obviously it would be a medical first. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like just making narratives, trying to sell narratives in a way that makes them feel fresh and exciting, which I think is actually a really exciting thing, and why I feel really positive about women in film, because I kind of go, look, you're going to see something that's going to make you feel genuinely weird and genuinely uncomfortable. That is surely what the new horizons of horror are, as you were talking about, you know, showing an audience something that makes them genuinely uncomfortable instead of the usual horror tropes.
Yeah, and Kate, yours is a very female narrative as well, an egomaniac.
Yes, it's basically a semi-autobiography, so it's incredibly female. It's an incredibly female narrative, and it's quite interesting because I've already noticed a slight difference in audience reactions, that the women who watch it tend to really, really love it, and they're like, yes, I really love this, whereas when men watch it, they're like, oh yeah, this is good. And I think it's just a different understand, you know, it's just because it is a very female driven story. It's very based on personal experiences for me, particularly within the film industry. And I think some people are like, oh, you know, often I've not had any women say to me, did that really happen? But I've had a lot of men being like, no, that would never have happened, blah, blah, blah. And I think that is kind of part of it. I mean, for me, I think all my stories would be very female driven, because to be honest, I'd have no idea how to write a man. I would not know where to start. Whereas,
a woman and take away all reason and sensibility.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that actually. Yeah, like yeah, I think that would have to be it. And I just also think we just need more. I think we need more interesting female characters. I think we need female leads which have huge stories and have huge personalities and are complex. It's not about everyone being like a feminist role model, blah, blah, blah. It's actually about a character being a human being and being not a stereotype or not held within a stereotype, but a character being flawed, but being human.
That's amazing. Well, then you can have a round of applause for Alice Lowe, Anna Biller, Kate Shenton and Jen Handorf, who are all absolutely amazing, obviously.